I just wanted to run through real quick all the tools you guys are going to need to do this time belt job. May look like a lot of tools, but it's not. You don't need a couple of these tools. I mean, some of these tools are specialty tools, and you can get away with get away with not using them. But first thing I did was I used this half-inch Milwaukee electric gun. Love this gun. Love this gun. This helped me break loose the crankshaft pulley bolt with the Lyle super socket. You can see how much more robust that thing is compared to the regular 19mm socket. So that's all that was. You can actually get it out if you don't have this socket. You can get a 50mm Honda crankshaft pulley tool. You can rent these from AutoZone or O'Reilly's, and you just basically put this onto a 50mm or half-inch breaker bar and lock that into place, and that sits on the crankshaft pulley. And then you come in with that kind of stinks because you can't fit this super socket into the crankshaft pulley tool. But then as you're holding the crankshaft pulley still, you bring in the 19mm and grab that onto the bolt, the 19mm crankshaft pulley bolt, and break it loose that way. You actually need 2 half-inch breaker bars, or you could step up to 3/4 inch breaker bars and sockets, which I've done because I was getting sick of coming across crankshaft pulley bolts that wouldn't break free. Sockets and extensions. You're going to need an assortment of extensions, sockets. I want to say 5 you're going to need. 10, 12, 14, 17. Oh, 4 you need. 10, 12, 14, 17. You're going to need them in 3/8 and 1/4 inch as well. So just being mindful of that. The majority of the ones that I used were 3/8. 10, 12, 14, 17s. A handful of ratchets. Still got the socket on there. But like I said, some of these are specialty tools. I picked this up just to make things a little bit quicker for me. Chemo 3/8 electric ratchet. Great little tool. I like this one a lot better than the Harbor Freight one. It's a lot lighter and seems a little bit more powerful than that one. Links to all these tools I'll put in the description below. But yeah, if you guys are doing a lot of work, I highly recommend this gun. If you can afford it and you're doing quite a lot of work, this gun is awesome. But if you're going to invest in either one of these guns, I would say this one, the 3/8, the Chemo 3/8. It's going to serve your purposes better. You will use this one a lot more than you would this half-inch. So then I have next is a 1/4 inch long ratchet. Picked this one up from, I think, O'Reilly's. Then I have my Stanley 3/8 ratchet. This is my go-to ratchet. I love this thing just because of the fact that it extends. Love this ratchet. Picked this up from Walmart. I loved it so much I actually went back and bought another one that's still in the packaging. Just a 1/4 inch another ratchet. Got a 1/4 inch ratchet. I think I bought this from AutoZone. I have a couple of them. The reason I like this is because it has a swivel head. Makes it easier to get in there and kind of come in at an angle and do what you need to do. This is the O'Reilly long 3/8 ratchet I just picked up. This thing has turned out to be very, very helpful. There's a part number here. Let me see if I can see it. GM6517, power torque, 120 tooth. Very nice little ratchet. I liked it a lot. Helped me break it loose on the motor mount. So then I have a couple scrapers. These are the scrapers I used for the water pump. Hex keys. You need a 5mm hex to get the solenoid on the intake loose. Here's my 19mm belt, serpentine belt, drive belt tool to help me loosen up the tensioner in one fell swoop. Love this thing. Love this thing. So as you guys can notice, I paint a lot of my tools yellow because I hate it when I do a job and I leave the tool on the window cowl and it just drives away down the road. Bye-bye. Never to be seen again. So a lot of my tools, I usually mark them with yellow paint or yellow electrical tape in the case of this tool. Okay, moving on. Moving along, have some extensions. Have a 1/2 inch breaker bar here. Have a 1/2 inch extension bar here. I use this to move or rotate the crankshaft pulley when I was trying to line everything up on top dead center. Have my Harbor Freight specialty ratchet. On this end it's a 3/8. On this end it's a 1/4 inch. Love this thing. Love the design of it. Love how it's thin over here compared to like this. The head is a lot thinner, so you can get in there in some more tight spots. And then same with the 1/4 inch as well. I put tape on here because it just got flimsy. I tightened it up on each side, but still the head would flop around too much. And that's why I ended up taping it. That's why the tape's there. So here's my set of 0 offset wrenches. I like how they come in, like there's 2 sizes per wrench. So on this side 19mm, on this side 17. Then you have 17-14, and this is a ratcheting one, 14-12 on this one. But a link to a very affordable set that I picked up. And then I needed a ratcheting stubby gear wrench, 14mm, to get the bottom bolt on the mount that went into the engine for the motor mount. So that's what I use this one for. I have a marking pen to mark the timing belt. Marked it in 2 spots. What else? What else? Okay, got my tool. This is actually a, what do they call this? A spill-proof funnel kit. So this is used for burping the system. You take this. This is a really cool design. You take this. Obviously, take off your radiator cap. You drop this down in first. Then this comes over and locks into place where the radiator cap goes. And you take this, the funnel, it just gets plugged in here, right? So it looks like that. And then this seals, and you start pouring in your coolant. And then you get up to about, you can kind of see the marks where I've used it, about halfway. Fill it halfway up with coolant. It'll take a bunch of coolant. Typically a J series engine takes about 2 gallons of coolant. So once it's full, once it's up to the top, or up to the middle I should say, start the vehicle. Let it get up to operating temperature. Let the thermostat open up. The cooling fans will come on. I do that, 3 or 4 times, and you'll see bubbles coming out. And the antifreeze in here, the coolant in the funnel will actually get hot, and that's when you know you've burped the system. Once you see most of the bubbles stop, and the coolant is hot. And then the cool thing is it has this little stem, and let's say you still have this full of, there's still coolant left in here. You just stab this through, stops the coolant from leaking out, and you pop it off, the blue thing, and you put the coolant, the remaining coolant, leftover coolant, back in your coolant jug. So that's pretty cool. I'll put a link in the description below to Eric the Car Guy. He does a video on that. But yeah, that's not a whole lot of tools to do this job. And like I've said in the past, the hardest part in this whole thing is getting that crankshaft pulley bolt loose. So if you get that loose, you're halfway there. You're almost home by that point, even though you have the whole job in front of you. But yeah, there you go. Tools that I use to do the timing belt on a J Series Honda V6. All right, ladies and gentlemen, working on a Honda Accord with a 3.0 liter V6 J Series engine. Love this engine, but actually doing the timing belt on this thing and just getting started. So the first thing I like to do, I know guys like to come in here and take all this stuff off, take all your spark plugs out and coil packs, take off your power steering pump, but don't do any of that, dude. The first thing you need to do, and the most critical thing you need to accomplish before doing any of that stuff, is get your crankshaft pulley bolt off. So right here on the passenger side, the wheel is off, the fender cover is off. If you can't get the wheel off or you can't get the fender cover off, you shouldn't even attempt this job, because you're going to go deep into the engine. So if you can't do that, don't attempt this. But the first thing I do on all timing belt jobs is try to get that crankshaft pulley bolt off, because it can be a real bear to get that thing off. And if you can't, you're not going anywhere. You're not changing the belt. You're not doing anything. So that is my first thing to do. This car has been sitting for over a year, so it's probably rusted. I want to get in here with a 19mm socket regular with a Milwaukee gun, 1/2 inch gun, and see if I can break it loose. Then I'll step up to the Lyle robust meaty socket, and we'll try to break it free that way. I'll put links in the description below of more videos I did on this timing belt and tips and tricks I've done. I have a lot of videos on my channel that go into timing belts, but this is going to be a in-depth timing belt video for you guys. I have to do it on this vehicle. It hasn't been done. The owner says he may or may not have done it. He can't remember. I don't know how somebody couldn't remember, but here we go. So, like I said, first thing we're going to do is take off that crankshaft pulley bolt. And if I can't get it off, I'll show you some ways to cheat and get it off. But one method I don't like to use, a lot of guys will comment and say, oh, just put a breaker bar on there and click the engine, tap the engine, it'll break it loose. Yes, that is a way to do it, but I've seen guys snap that bolt, and I've also seen guys strip that bolt. So you have no way of getting the bolt out, and you'd have to take it to a machine shop. So I don't like to use that method. So I'm going to try, like I said, I'll try a gun, and then we'll take some more drastic measures if we can't get it off. But, got a 19mm socket. That's what it takes for the crankshaft pulley bolt. Got my Milwaukee half-inch gun here. All the links to the tools that I use in this video will be in the description below. So, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Not doing anything. So let's jump up to the super socket, the Lyle super socket. Got the Lyle super socket here. It's just a heavier duty 19mm socket that's supposed to break it loose with more meat on it and give a little more torque when removing it. So let's see if that works. Well, I'm going to eat my own words because sometimes it's not that easy. And anybody who's struggled with this before in the past, leave some comments down below and tell me what horror stories you've had. So there it is. There's a crankshaft pulley bolt if you've never seen one before. Next thing we'll do is go in there, get everything to top dead center, and we'll start. But this usually is the hardest part in the whole job. So if you're able to get this thing out, you're home free. Now that we got the crankshaft pulley bolt off, that was the hardest part. We're coming back to the top of the engine. We need to get this belt off. There's a 14mm bolt for the tensioner, the dry belt tensioner. We need to loosen up. We take these two 10mm bolts off for the power steering pump. This is your high pressure hose for your powering steering pump. We take that off. Probably have to disconnect it back here as well. I'll show you that when I get a little bit closer. I'm also going to take off this solenoid. This is an actuator for the intake plenum, for the upper intake plenum. Going to take that off. You have a little electrical connector here. Just push that, and then it should pop out, slide out of the way, because we need to be able to get the power steering pump out and free and clear. Okay, got that out of the way. Looks like there's either 4 or 5mm hex that holds this little actuator on. I'll take this off, the two 10mm, take this off, and then tackle the belt. And we can start working on the power steering pump. 10mm bolts, hold this on. This is your high pressure power steering hose. So just be careful when you take this off. There is going to be power steering fluid in there. So have yourself a rag, something to catch it with. It's also a good idea. There's a little O-ring in there that you should replace. You don't have to, but it's a good idea to replace it. Like I said, there's going to be power steering fluid that comes out of here. Just wiggle it back and forth a little bit, pulling up at the same time. There you go. Just going to push it up, put it under the windshield wiper. It's covered in a rag. There's your power steering fluid right down there. Now I have 2 hex. Let me try 5mm first. Yep, 5mm. Got a 5mm hex here. Make sure it's all the way in first before you try to move the bolt. That's in. Okay. Now I can pull that out. Pull the 2 hex bolts out. And I'm doing this to give me more room to get the power steering pump off. Just remember, if you took this off and it's in the down position, just make sure it's in the down position when you put it back on. Okay. Place that off to the side. Make sure you put these bolts back in. Hopefully they don't get in the way. I just put it back here so I know where they go. Okay, next I will tackle the drive belt. There is an older J-Series V6s. You have two belts. You have one that drives all the accessories, your air compressor, your power steering pump. I'm sorry, your air compressor, not your air compressor, your AC compressor, your alternator, goes around the crank, an idler, and there's two belts. And then one belt goes from the crank all the way to your power steering pump. On these newer versions of the J-Series, Honda engineered it so it's one big belt that covers everything. So there's one tensioner that puts tension on the belt. If you're replacing this belt, you could just cut it if you want. Just make sure you make a diagram and know how to put the belt back on, but you can just Google it. There's a lot of images out there on how the belt is routed. I'm actually not replacing the belt, so I'm going to get the tool to remove it. You get down here on your 14 millimeter tensioner, and then once you get some slack on it, you can take it off the power steering pump and it comes free and clear. Okay, so I have a tool that's designed specifically for taking off belts. On this side is a 14 millimeter, on this side is a 19 millimeter. Just slide your tool down in here. You get onto the pulley, the tensioner I should say. You pull it back, gives you slack on the belt. You're able to get it free and clear. Okay, this belt is super handy if you guys are doing a lot of work on Hondas or Toyotas, Acuras, Lexus. Very helpful. Very helpful. So then just get the belt out, kind of stuck underneath the power steering pump. Like I said, if you want, you could have cut this belt. Okay, there. You just fish it out. Okay, the belt is out. So one thing you want to do is take it, kind of crease it, you know, not snap it in half or anything, but just crease it, and you'll see there's a little bit of some cracks inside there, so it would be a good idea to replace this belt. Go with a quality belt. I've seen some issues where you use a cheap belt and you get screeching sound all the time, so use a good quality belt when doing this. But yeah, it'd be a good idea to replace this belt now. Okay, so you have a 12 millimeter bolt here. I'll bring you down closer. Then you have one down here as well, but that's what you need to do next to get the power steering pump. You don't have to remove this low pressure line. The frustrating thing about this is that these hoses get rock hard after a while. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the power steering pump from the brackets it's on. I'm going to move it forward on top of the fans near the radiator. But what happens sometimes is this belt is so worn and rock hard that it actually crack when you do that action. So these belts are not easy to come by. I had to buy one for a Pilot from the dealership from Honda, but hopefully it doesn't crack on me. I can just gently move it over here, bring it back when I'm ready to do it. But you have two 12 millimeter bolts, and I'll bring it down closer for that. So let's do that. Okay, so the next item we need to get out is power steering pump, and I want to show you where the two 12 millimeter bolts are. There's one right there with the lasers on, right there on the left-hand side of the screen. And then the other one is down kind of below, not really, but a little bit. And once again, the laser's on it right now. That 12 millimeter bolt needs to come out right there. So those are your 2 points where the bolts need to come out, and once you have those out, you'll be able to get this pump and put it right over there. So, okay, got a 12 millimeter on a 3/8 socket, 3/8 ratchet, I should say. I'm gonna come in here and help if I made sure it was going the right way. Okay, that one's loose. Go down here so I get you a better angle of it. This one's always a bear for some reason. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so the bottom bolt on the power steering pump is right back there. And it's always kind of, it's always a little tricky to get back there. What I found works best is I have this, on this end there's a 1/4 inch. On this end there's a 3/8. But it's basically a thin, it's basically a thin ratchet. Picked this up from Harbor Freight. This has been one of the best tools I've ever invested in. Really like this. Right up there with the zero offset wrenches that I have. But I'll put a link in the description below. They have this one, which is longer than this one has a little brother that's kind of short, cut in half. But these are my go-to when a bolt is kind of difficult to get to. So coming through here, get it onto the bolt. And I can ratchet it. And get it free that way. These two bolts should be the same exact length. So don't worry about putting them in, you know, which one goes on top, which one goes on bottom. But just work that out, and then we'll be able to get the power steering pump up and out of the way. Then we'll tackle the engine mount. Got both bolts out. Also, I wanted to show you real quick on the Harbor Freight ratchet. It was a 1/4 inch, 12 millimeter I was using. So, it's right there, 1/4 inch to get that lower power steering bolt off. Okay, so everything's free and clear. See, put it over on the radiator. Next thing we need to tackle is this engine mount. Then you have this mount that goes from the engine block to the engine mount. And this ground wire right here, did somebody put that back wrong? It should actually go right here, not there. And then we have covers here. 5 10mm bolts hold this one on, 5 10mm bolts hold that one on. And then down the bottom, I think there's 6 or 7 10mm bolts, but yeah, these are 14. You take those out, and then we'll take, may or may not take this engine mount out, depending on if I need the room or not. It's also a good idea to go ahead and pick up your power steering fluid reservoir. Just pick it up straight up and get it out of the way. Need to take off the idler. Maybe just throw some new bearings in that as well. But yeah, just slowly and surely making your way through it. It's not that difficult. Hardest part is getting the crankshaft pulley bolt off. Oh yeah, another thing right here. So there's a wiring harness that sits inside the rear timing cover. You can see right there where my finger's at. That usually is sitting inside there. Whoever did this last didn't put it back, but you need to just kind of get it out of the crevice. Get the wiring harness out of the crevice, and then you're free to get everything else out. But got the grounding strap off right there. Should be right here. Next thing I'm going to do is you have the pulley. I'm going to pull that off so I can get the front cover off. Right down here, right where the laser's at, right there. There's a 14mm bolt. And then to the left of that, there should be a 10 or 12mm bolt that you have to take off as well to get that pulley up and out, which will probably be easier to get from the bottom. So let me break this loose real quick. Got a 3/8 14mm. Go down here. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Come on down here. Get onto it. Okay, that's loose. Now, typically this bolt will not, it will come out, but it doesn't come out because it's not going to come out 100% because it's going to hit the frame of the vehicle. So you're actually going to loosen this bolt all the way up as much as you can. It's going to hit the frame, and then once you have the other 12, or I think it's a 12mm bolt. I can't remember off the top of my head, but once you have that off, the bolt will actually come with the pulley, because you got to kind of sneak it out when you pull the pulley up. When you take the tensioner off, you kind of got to sneak it out, and you're going to sneak it out with the bolt. Let me see. I can show you that real quick. Okay, it's free. So see right down there. I'm hitting the frame of the vehicle. So it'll just stay like that. When you get the other bolt out, the pulley, the tensioner, and the bolt will come out as one unit. Okay, down here on the bottom again, I reinstalled the crankshaft pulley bolt because I thought I was going to rotate the engine, line everything up, but I'm actually going to do it after I get the top covers off. So go ahead and come in here, take that off again. One thing I always like to do and I might get some hate comments for it, but I don't really care, is I'll actually put NACs on the threads on the crankshaft pulley bolt. I also talked to another guy that says he always replaces the crankshaft pulley bolts, but I never have. The crankshaft pulley is pretty easy to come off. Just wiggle it. Not like Toyota, where sometimes you have to have a puller to get these things off. There you go. You are free and clear. Oh, wow. Okay, there should be a little plate, a ring, that keeps the, that goes between the crankshaft pulley and the timing belt, but it's not there, it's gone. So right here, there should be a little plate, but it's not there. Also, you have this keyway right here too. That lines up with the crankshaft. This is your actual crankshaft. This is the end of the crankshaft right here. And that keyway needs to be in there. So do not install your timing belt without that keyway. Wow. Whoever did this did a... It's not a good sign. Kind of a hack job, whoever was in here. So, well, at least I know the timing belt has been changed, because if it was from factory, if it was from Honda, it would have that little piece. Let me see if I have an extra one. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the piece I'm talking about. This is like a beveled washer. This should have been on the crankshaft pulley bolt between. This should have been between the crankshaft and the belt. So you can see right here. Oh, sorry, it's kind of hard to see. Once you get in there, you'll see that it's beveled. It's actually beveled out this way. It's that way, okay? And so the part that's beveled, that's coming out, it should be towards the crankshaft pulley. So if I was in there like this, right? Hopefully you guys can see that. It would sit like this. If I can line it up. It would sit in there just like that. Okay? So make sure you have that in place. And also make sure you have that keyway in place as well. Now I took this off because I wanted to get the tensioner out of the way. So I have the 14mm bolt out on top or in the middle, and then I'll come from the bottom here and take out, it's either 10mm or 12mm. I think it's a 12mm. Yeah, it's a 12mm. So okay, so the 12mm we're looking at is right there. Okay, that's the bottom of the tensioner, and that's the only bolt that's holding in the tensioner right now, because we got the long 14mm bolt out. So let me get this one out, and then I'll try to fish it out. I'll usually fish it out from the bottom. There it is. Now the tensioner wants to come. Like I said, you're going to take that 14mm bolt out all at the same time. And there you go. Tensioner's out. Here's the beautiful tensioner. Just lost the 14mm bolt, but if you guys want, you can replace this. Actually, be a good idea to replace this, or you can just do the bearings. I'll put a link in the description below where I show you guys how you can replace just the bearings inside the pulleys themselves and not waste $100. Because like I said in the other video, what usually happens is the bearings wear out. There's a big spring inside here, and if it's separating between these 2 points where my thumb is, then you're going to want to replace it. But you know, usually you can get away with just replacing the bearings. Just note that this top bolt is reverse threaded, so it'd be righty loosey, lefty tighty. Kind of hard to say. There you go. Now we can get the top covers off. Okay, so here's the front cover. Right here is a viewing window that shows you the cam gear. On the cam gear, there's numbers 1 through 6 that correlate with the cylinders on the engine. So once I have this off, I'm going to show you. I'm going to line it up to number 1, which will be top dead center for cylinder number 1, which is right back here. So let me take this cover off. There's 5 10mm bolts that hold this thing on, and then there's one right in here. It's kind of recessed as well. So got my handy dandy Chemo electric 3/8, which I love this thing. There's one there. There should be one right here, but it's gone. And that one's gone as well. Man, whoever's in here did a hack job, dude. Not putting bolts back. I hate that. I really hate that. And then there's one bolt right down there, so. What is that? I didn't even put the right bolts back. Kids nowadays. Should look like that. Not this. That's the wrong bolt. Also should be a gasket that goes all the way around here. And that's gone. Okay, so right here, I'll have to get you in closer, but there are numbers. Like this is number 6. Right back here is number 1. You got to bring number 1 all the way up to this point right here so that everything is top dead center, which will line up this cam gear, the rear cam gear, and then the crank as well. And then I also like to take the time belt and I'll put 2 marks per gear. So I'll put 2 marks on the front, 2 marks on the back. I'll mark the gear as well. Same with the crank. That way I can transfer the marks onto the new belt and make sure that I'm on top dead center. I'm not a tooth off. Because it's a real pain in the butt if you come in here and you do all this work and you're 1 tooth off and you have to open everything back up again just to fix that. So I know I've gotten some comments in the years past where guys are like, there's no reason to mark the time belt. Well, you know what? You do your thing, I'll do my thing. I'm going to keep marking my time belts. I've never had an issue when I put everything back together and fire it up. So like I said, you do you, I'll do me. And this time belt looks not good. There's marks in it, and that could be because the little washer, the beveled washer on the crank was not in place. But let me get farther into this and I'll be able to tell you. All right, here's the shot of the time belt. Got the rear cover off. 5 10mm bolts hold that one on, and just like the front one, some were missing. They put in a wrong bolt, and then right down here, you guys can see it. That's the lower timing cover. So I'm going to take that off. I think it's 6 or 7 10mm bolts hold that thing on. Then we take off this bracket or spacer right here. And then this is a motor mount. Actually, that's the motor mount. This is just the apparatus that connects it to the engine and the frame of the vehicle. So 2 14mm bolts there. And then you have, on this side, you have 3 14mm bolts that go right into the block, right into the engine block. So, gotta get those out. I won't bore you with the lower timing belt cover removal. I'll just show it to you once I get it all off. But you just get the bolts out, and then you're able to get out. Just sneak it down. Just take it down towards the ground, and that cover will come off. And then we'll rotate the engine. Let me show you that real quick. So you're looking at the front cam. You can see there's numbers 6, 6, 1 right there. And I got to bring the number 1 all the way to this point right here, which puts everything at top dead center. So I'm gonna go down to the crank, rotate it that way, and bring this up to 1. Then I'll mark this belt in 2 different areas, like one here on this side, and then up along the belt, and right here. Same with the rear cam, and then the crank. So I'll get the lower cover off. All right, got the lower cover off. You can see right there, got it off, and this is it right here. So this is really weird. So somebody cut a big hole in this, right? And also trimmed all this corner off. It should look like this. See? I don't know why they cut this huge hole into it, and I don't know why they trimmed that piece off. But I don't know why. Maybe I don't know. I was gonna say maybe they're trying to sneak the crank. Maybe they're trying to sneak this past the crankshaft pulley. But in that case, these would be cut off too. So I'm gonna install this one. So weird. Why do people do that? People are strange sometimes. But one thing I want to show you guys, and I'll put a link in the video below. But what I do is I'll come in here and right here in the corner, so you can see it has a rubber seal. The top 2 and the bottom time belt covers have this seal. And what happens if you have any leaks on your cams, any oil leaks, or if your water pump starts leaking, it's going to get caught in here. So what I'll do is I'll come in here. I can't hard to hold it. Right here in the corner, right where my finger is at, I'll go ahead. I'll drill a hole
in that corner and then in that corner as well. So if any oil or water pump starts to fail or weep, it goes through that hole. It doesn't get caught behind this cover, and you can catch issues or problems relatively quickly before it turns into a big problem. So like I said, I'll just drill a hole. It's just plastic. Drill a hole into this, and that way it gives me a way to see if there's any problems with my cars or customer's car, or whatever the case may be. So it's just a good idea. Next thing I'll do, I'll go ahead and put the crankshaft pulley back on and the bolt, and then rotate it around to top dead center on the front cam, and then we'll be ready to take off the belt. Or actually, then I'll mark the belt on the front, the rear, and on the crank in 2 different spots. I'll show you that when I do it, and then we can take the timing belt tensioner off, the pulleys, and we'll take off the water pump. In that previous section, you can see I was getting had to put on the crankshaft pulley bolt, and then turn the engine clockwise. The reason I put on the crankshaft pulley is just in case the belt got stuck, or the bolt got stuck. I could get the 50 millimeter Honda crankshaft pulley tool on there and stop it from rotating. Because if you don't have anything on there, and you just put the bolt in, for whatever reason, I'm just that way. I just wanted to have an extra peace of mind when I put that on there. If it got stuck, if the bolt got stuck for any reason, I could put the tool in there, stop the crankshaft from turning. That's the only reason I put it on there. So that's just me. So now we have it all back up together. We have it on top dead center, number 1. You can see this line right here lines up with this line, and there's one in the back as well down the crank. So what next I'm going to do, I'm going to mark this. Just draw a line right here. Draw it down here on the side. Okay, then I'll draw another one right here. I always like to do 2 for the added sense of security. And then once I get the belt off, I'll actually transfer the marks onto the new belt. Okay, do that one. There's the rear cam. You can see the mark right here. Let's go ahead and mark that. Bring that all the way across. Lines up. Then I'll pick another mark like right here. Do it right there. And mark it on the belt as well. And then when I bring in the new belt, the marks I transfer on the new belt will line up with the marks on the cams. Okay, now I'll go to the bottom, do the same on the crank. Hopefully I can get this to back off with a slap of the ratchet. Going up. Got it loose. There's the keyway popped out. Don't forget that. Do not forget that, my friends. Usually like to mark on the side where I can see the mark. I'll do one over here. Okay, next thing I'll do is I'll remove the tensioner, the timing belt tensioner, which is held on by 2 10mm bolts. Let me see if I can show that to you real quick. So right there is your tensioner, right? Held on by 2 10mm bolts. Once I get that off, it'll loosen up the tension on the timing belt. I can start taking the belt off. Sorry it's a little hard to see, but on the left-hand side of the screen, I'm just going down here. I'm coming through the bottom and getting the timing belt tensioner bolts loose. There's 2 10mm. But if you guys, oh man, that thing wasn't even tight. Okay, so I got the top one, the top bolt for the tensioner loose on the top because it was already loose. And then I came in from the top with a 3/8 long millimeter let me try this again. A 3/8 deep 10mm 3/8 socket, and got the bottom bolt loose that way. So I'll go back down and see if I can loosen up with the socket in my finger.
There's the tensioner right there. 2 bolts. One thing you guys want to look for when you do this is on the very top, there can be oil seepage. There's a little bit of oil in this tensioner, and sometimes the seal will go bad on the top. You'll see a pool of oil. It's basically sitting there at an angle like this. So if you see oil in there, definitely change it. You can reuse them, but I wouldn't suggest it. If you're going this far and this deep into it, just replace everything. Buy a time belt component kit on Amazon. I'll put some links in the description below. But just replace everything when you're in there. Don't take the risk of losing a engine because you want it to be a cheapskate, and try to save some money. So you can see, look there, by Gates, made in China. Next thing we need to do is get this motor mount out. So there's one right there. There's a bolt right there. Should be 14mm. There's one down there. Should be 14mm as well. You have these two 14mm. And then below this, and I'll show you when I get there, but below this, and it's like an extension that goes from the motor to the actual bracket itself. There's 3 14mm bolts down there. I had to move the power steering reservoir up and out of the way, just held on by this little bracket. So you have a bolt on this side, and then you'll have one on the other side. So I got this bigger power torque. This is a GM 6517 from O'Reilly Auto Parts. I'd seen it there, and I had a coupon, and it was on sale too, and I got it for like 22 bucks, but it's super long, right? It's kind of like a mini breaker bar, so I picked it up. So I'm actually going to try it on this one right here. Got to get some more leverage. Yep, that broke it free. There's one bolt. I'm going to break these free first before I remove that last bolt, just so I can get a little more leverage. There's one. There's two. Good. Just lowering it down here on this side, on the other side of the motor mount. Try and line it up. Bring it out as one assembly. That's what it looks like. Nothing special. I'll clean these bolts up. My wire wheel. If you haven't replaced it in a long time, go ahead and do it now. It's easier to do it now than it is to do it later. So, okay, now we have room for this bracket right here. I don't know what you call it, extension, motor mount extension, whatever you want to call it. But right down here, you can see one of them. Right where my finger is at right there, that's a 14mm bolt. You have one right here as well. It's kind of recessed, and then right down in the center, where is it? That's farther down. You can actually see it from the bottom side as well, but that is, there's a 14mm. So there's 3 in total, and those go directly right into the water pump. Once I have this out, be able to get the belt out, and once we get that out, take the idler pulleys. There's one on that side right there, and there's one kind of below right there. You'll see it when I get this bracket out, and then we can start taking out the water pump. And once you take the water pump out, you're halfway there. It's a halfway point. Okay, this is another case. You can see the 3 bolts, 3 14mm. This bottom one will not come out because, once again, it's hitting against the frame, okay? So just make note of that. You're not going to be able to get the bottom one out. You might be able to get these top 2 out, but you can just sneak it out like I did, just right there. There's no need to take it out. And just remember, that's when you put it back in. Just note, you need to put this back in before you put in the covers, too. There's been a couple times when I first started doing this, I put the covers on first, and then I put this on. And it doesn't work because the covers actually sit behind this. Or actually, this sits behind the covers, so. The 3 bolts are different sizes as well, so just make note of that. The 2 top ones are the longer ones. The bottom one is the shorter one. Just took them to my wire wheel real quick and cleaned them all up. They look a lot better. I'll put a little bit of grease on the threads when I install them back into place. So it's time to get off the idler pulleys. There's one right here, and there's one right down here. I'll try to get a better shot when I get closer to that.
But what I have here is a zero offset wrench. It's a 14 millimeter on one side, and this is 17 millimeter on the other. Very, very useful if you guys are working on a lot of Hondas, Acuras, Toyotas, Lexus. If you want, I'll put a link in the description below to a very affordable set that you can find on Amazon. But you just pull it up here like this. The torque spec for this, I want to say it's 16 pounds, and then on this one it's 33 foot-pounds. But I'll put the number up right now. I could be wrong, so break that one loose, and then I'll come in here, break this one loose. Sorry, now you can see what I'm doing. This one sits right below the water pump. I'll come in here. There it is. Looks like it's coated in oil, and I think it's coolant. Either that or it just hasn't been changed in a long, long time. So now I can get, actually, I should have pulled the belt off a while back. Just reaching down to the crank. Pull the belt off. This belt has seen better days. So I have a 14 millimeter zero offset ratcheting wrench now. I'm going to use right here, right in the center of the screen, to get that off. Here's a tensioner idler pulley, because the tensioner sits right here. Here's an idler pulley. And let me show you what a bad idler pulley sounds like. The bearings are shot in that shot. So you definitely want to replace this. This one doesn't sound too bad. But I'm in here. I already have the parts, new parts. I'm putting new parts in. I'm not going to reuse that. Water pump is held on by 5 10 millimeter bolts. Very easy to get off. Just be careful, because once you open that sucker up, you're going to start leaking coolant. So have something ready to catch it. Don't let your animals or dog near it, because they will lick it up, and it's sweet to them, and it's very toxic, and it will kill them. So just be careful when you do that. Okay, took out all the bolts except for the last bottom two. You can hear and see you got coolant coming out. Just doing a slow drain into the pan. Took my it's best if you use a piece of wood, but I just took my long O'Reilly's ratchet and just tapped the top of the pulley for the water pump. Just gonna let it drain. Once most of it's drained out, I'll go ahead and open it up all the way. You can get a piece of wood and then smack it with a hammer and get it loose. Looks like somebody has gone in there and put RTV. I can kind of see RTV here at the very top. So looks like I'll have to clean all that off. The thing with RTV is it didn't come that way from Honda, so usually I don't put it in there. I've seen situations on like 5.7 liter Hemis, on Dodge Hemis, where there was cavitation behind the water pump, and it ate some of the metal away. So when I saw that, I went ahead and used our RTV to seal up where the cavitation had happened. If you don't know what cavitation is, you can look it up. It doesn't really happen. I've never seen it happen on Honda J Series V6s, but it does happen in engines. But cavitation is basically where bubbles are formed inside of a cooling system, and when those bubbles pop, it's basically like a little explosion, and it eats away metal. So that's what cavitation is. You can see down there, it's dripping out of the water pump. Got my pan down there catching it. So I'll let that drain out for a couple minutes and then take off the water pump all the way. Got all the coolant out of the system. I basically just loosened all the bolts up, left one of the bolts in, tapped a little bit, gave it little love taps, and let it drip down. You don't have to do it that way. I just find it easier to control the coolant and didn't want it to run all over the ground. But I just need to take this one bolt off and then get this loose. Like I said, sometimes these are stuck on there. So if you want, you get a piece of wood, a 2x4, a foot long, hit it with a hammer, and you're able to get it out. But let me get this last bolt out. There you go. Free and clear. Let's take a look at this. So you can see it's seen better days. This O-ring is collapsed. Surprised it hasn't been leaking. The bearing doesn't sound bad, but so you have these little metal dowel pins that guide it into the engine block. There's one there, there's one there, one there, one there. Make sure those come out, because if they stay stuck in the engine block, then you're not going to be able to get the new water pump in. Also, when you install the new water pump, this O-ring, does this one have it? Yes, it does. Okay, so right here, right there. Let me get my knife so I can show it to you exactly what I'm talking about. There are little divots on the water pump, and that actually pinches the O-ring into place. Some water pumps don't have this, so if you need the O-ring to stay in place while you're installing it onto the engine block, you can use spray adhesive. I've also used RTV in the past, where I use like little pea-size RTV, like in certain spots, like one here, just little RTV or spray adhesive. So that way you know that the O-ring is installed correctly and it doesn't fall out. Yeah, this water pump has seen better days. Doesn't look that bad down there, but it could be better. So I'm going to take the time, clean this up, get a little scraper, clean this all up, get some paper towels, get it cleaned up to the best of my ability. Careful when you guys are running your fingers along here, because this is aluminum, sharp aluminum. It can cut you, so just take your time, be careful. Just going to pass over with a paper towel, then I'll come in with a scraper and see what I can get off. You want this as clean as possible before you install the new water pump, so there's no contamination for the new O-ring. Then everything seals and goes in perfectly. I know I said earlier it looks like they had used RTV, but I don't know. Nah, maybe they did a little bit. But let me go get a scraper and I'll come back and scrape this thing clean. Okay, just coming in here, cleaning up as well as possible. It's not really all that bad. I've seen worse. Just take your time. But I will actually end the video here. If you guys have made it this far, you guys already know what you're doing. I will actually make a second video. I'll put a link in the description below where I show you how to put everything back together. But if you can, if this video has helped you guys, please subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you liked it, if you hated it, if you think I suck, whatever. But yeah, I'll stop it right now. So this would be removal. Next video will be installation. You guys have a good one. Just take your time. Let's see, if your cams keep moving on you when you're trying to install the belt, you can always take out your spark plugs, and that'll help prevent the cams from moving. Also, if you want, you can use a binder clip when you get the belt on. If you guys aren't going to watch the installation video, you can use a binder clip to hold the, one cam on, loop it back around the water pump, do the back one, use a binder clip to hold the belt in place so it doesn't jump time on you or doesn't jump teeth on you. And yeah, you're good to go. So there you go, guys. Hope this has helped. Watch the second part if you want to see installation.